Connecticut and Massachusetts, Z&M Homes buys houses. Sell your property to the local guys.
Needs repairs, updates, maybe foreclosure or inherited? No problem. We got you. Google or add us on Facebook at ZANDMHomes.com.
It's Baxy's Musical Podcast.
You know, the weird thing about getting older is that I might not remember where I left my keys. I might not remember all of my important passwords. I might not even remember where the hell I parked my car. But I can damn well remember a song from 37 years ago like it was yesterday. And I'm pretty sure I can tell you where I was when I first heard it. See, that's what I'm talking about. I have no business remembering that stuff, but yet I do. In 1986, the band The Rainmakers released their self-titled debut album. And the song, Let My People Go Go, was the big hit off that record. It was an insanely catchy track that would become an even bigger hit in the UK and throughout Europe. It was a record that was recorded at the legendary Arden Studios in Memphis, Tennessee, and produced by Terry Manning, who would have a hand in working with bands like Led Zeppelin, ZZ Top, Isaac Hayes, Al Green, Joe Walsh, and Big Star, and many, many more. And at the time of that record's release, the Rainmakers were being hailed as America's next great band by Newsday. Newsweek called it the most auspicious debut album of the year. Rolling Stone, USA Today, and the College Music Journal were tripping all over themselves over these guys, and deservedly so. But as great as these American-sounding records were, they were still bigger stars in Europe, especially in Norway, which could not get enough of the Rainmakers. Over the course of their career, the Rainmakers released 9 terrific albums. Their songs were clever, original, and melded with a great sense of humor. Their lyrics were even cited by one of their most passionate fans, author Stephen King, who quoted the Rainmakers in not one, but 2 of his best-selling novels. But the story behind the band is every bit as interesting and as compelling as the ones written by Stephen King himself. And the primary songwriter for the Rainmakers was Bob Walkenhorst. He's my guest today from the Rainmakers on Baxy's Musical Podcast. I want to thank you for being flexible. I know I had a little bit of a scheduling issue last week, but it's great that you're able to do this. I really do appreciate it quite a lot.
Well, you're welcome. It's nice that Alan set this up, and my schedule's pretty flexible and relaxed these days, so no big deal.
You know, it's funny when Alan contacted me. He said because he's been paying attention to the podcast and the people I've been booking. He said, "Do you remember the Rainmakers?" And without any hesitation, I said, "Yes, I remember the Rainmakers. I remember 1986, Let My People Go Go." And it's like, it's like one of those songs I played in college radio. And the weird part about it is, 37 years later, that hook is so powerfully ingrained into my head. It's literally one of those songs that, for whatever reason, keeps popping in my head, I'd say, like 2 or 3 times a week.
I apologize.
Well, I was going to ask you. I'm not sure whether to thank you or charge you for that.
Yeah, really.
When you write a song like that, or you stumble across, or however you wind up coming to it, what does it make you feel like? I mean, is there a particular feeling you get when you say, wow, I just can't believe that just poured right out of me? What do you do when that happens?
Well, that was a fairly early song. I really felt like I had only kind of gotten my songwriting legs under me about a year before that, maybe a year to 2 years before that. Wow. So I still had a lot of doubts about my songwriting as far as being able to tell what was good and what was not good. And I clearly remember, but we had this little trio. I was the original drummer in the band. We had a trio, and we were really very focused on, let's figure out how to write songs, let's figure out how to make original music and make original recordings and all that. And I was kind of the guy working on the songwriting part of it, but I wasn't really sure when I wrote a good one and when I didn't. And I remember actually bringing that into the band and saying, okay, and we were trying really hard to write songs about unusual subject matter. There have been too many love songs written, too many party songs written, all that stuff, angsty stuff. I was really trying to find unique subject matter. And I remember bringing it into the band and going, guys, I've written this song. If this is too stupid or just doesn't work, you tell me. So I was not confident about it. They're like, no, I think that's okay. And yeah, then after play, and then we were road testing the songs. You know, they were always played live before they were recorded.
Sure.
And you could see what people responded to and what they remembered and what they sang along with. You could see that real quickly. And so, yeah, that song I came to realize was, okay, this is a well-structured pop song. And actually, sometimes in past years when we've played this song and it's changed keys once, there's certain things in the chord changes, and I think, how did I think of that? That doesn't even make any sense. And it's just like the wonderful things that happen when you really don't know what you're doing.
The trio you're talking about is Steve, Bob, and Rich.
Right.
And you recorded a record called Balls, which, by the way, I respect that title. But you guys did change.
Have you seen the album?
I have seen it on Spotify. I haven't actually held a physical copy of it.
It has our 3 bowling balls on the cover of it. So it was, we were pretty funny guys, really. So and each bowling ball had our name, inscribed in it. So the top one was Steve, mine was Bob, and then the last ball was Rich. So, but great album. In fact, it was the album cover that got us signed to Mercury Record. They, all those record companies in the 80s, and I suppose before and after, had a policy of not listening to any unsolicited material. That was their tagline. If it's unsolicited material, we will not listen to it. So Pete Lubin, I don't know if you've ever interviewed Pete. He's kind of a legendary A&R guy who's remained a good friend of mine. They had this pile where they just threw all the unsolicited material, and our album was one of the unsolicited. So they had this massive pile. Well, the directors, there were budget issues or something. Pete was pissed off. He always considered himself, an artist as an A&R man, and they told him, he couldn't be. He had to be picking out better bands or different kind of bands or something. And anyway, someone had gotten under his skin. He thought, well, I'm just going to sign something terrible and show him what, who's boss here. So he went to the pile and said, let me pick out something that's absolutely going to be crap. And he sees this album cover with 3 bowling balls on the cover. And he goes, this is going to suck. And puts it on the turntable, and Pete says, you don't know how disappointed I was that you guys didn't suck. He said, I really wanted this to be awful. So that was the beginning of our relationship with Mercury Records.
So was signing with Mercury the reason why you guys changed your name? I know you added another guy. I mean, I would have bought a record from Steve, Bob, Rich, and Pat. I think that sells the whole thing. Well,
bands that start out as bar bands, you're playing 4 hours of cover songs. And then if you're serious about the music, you're trying to figure out, how do I write songs that are as good as these cover songs we're playing? How can I write a song that if we played a Beatles song and we played this one after it, the bottom of the show doesn't fall out, So we had figured out how to write songs, and I was the guy doing most of the writing. And being the drummer, even though I was a stand-up drummer and kind of, the centerpiece, it was hard work, and the songs I was writing needed a little more sound to them. It really was made more for a 2-guitar band, and we were just a 1-guitar band. So we had been leaning towards doing that anyway, and we knew during the making of the record that this would be the time to make that change. So it was really our decision. It was not. There were people at Mercury who were like, "Oh no, don't change the name. Steve, Bob, and Rich is just so, lovably corny."
Right.
But no, we wanted. So we had all the time during the making of the record to decide. We knew who our drummer was going to be, Pat Tomic, and just had to decide what the band name would be. So it was our decision.
Pretty remarkable, though, when you think about it. You go from being in this talent puddle, and the next thing you know, it's picked out of this pile, and then you're recording your first album at Ardent Studios with Terry Manning as your producer. There's so much history with that place, and especially with him. What a great way to come out swinging on your career. Tell me about that experience at Ardent.
Well, the first day we arrived in Memphis, they gotten us a really crap, they weren't going to spend any more money on us than they had to. And we had some crappy little motel we were staying in. But we arrived in Memphis, and they said, well, come on down to the studio this night. We're having, I think it was their 20th anniversary or something. The studio had been around for 20 years. We're going to have, a reception here. You guys should come down and see the studio. and all that. So we go down and we walk in the door. The first person we see is Billy Gibbons, and we're like, "Oh boy, this is getting real and cool very fast." And around the corner here, there's I can't remember if it was Duck. I think it was Duck Dunn. Anyway, all these Memphis, and Alex Chilton was there, and it's like all these Memphis people that we adored are like standing around drinking punch. So it was a pretty heady start. And then Terry Manning is just one of the nicest people and easygoing and really into the music and just a great guy to hang out with. So we immediately got along just great. And all those stories of struggling and arguing with your producer, that just did not apply. There was an understanding going into making our first record that Terry had done these, he had been working with ZZ Top for a long time, and Eliminator had happened, and how huge that record was.
Sure.
And Eliminator changed ZZ Top because the band was not in very good shape in those days, and so Terry convinced Billy Gibbons just to give this drum machine thing a try. And, that changed the feel and changed the sound and changed the approach. And so that was Terry's, what do you call it? That was his mode of operation those days. Is like, we're going to program drums because that's the sound that I'm working with right now. So that was just, and it's like, if you want to work with me, this is where we're going to do it. And He was nice enough about it, but he made it clear that this was not open to negotiation.
It's funny that you brought up Alex Chilton. I interviewed Jody Stevens, who you used to play with in Big Star.
And Jody was working at Ardent when we were there. He was in sales.
Yeah,
I think.
And now he manages it. He's the manager there. Yeah, my understanding is that when I talk to him, that he's kind of in charge or partially in charge of the place.
It's like a family thing down there.
Yeah, it is.
No, the day we arrived and went to that reception, the next day we go in and the replacements were just packing up. They had just recorded I think it was Pleased to Meet Me.
Yep.
And I'm trying to remember the legendary for Jim Dickinson. They had just, finished recording that with Jim Dickinson. And, say, here's all these cool people walking in and out. And we're like, okay, our turn. We went down to Memphis about 6 years ago, just before the pandemic. Me and Rich Ruth, our bass player, he lives in Nashville, has for a long time, and he drove his motorcycle over. And we took a buddy of ours from Norway and went to Ardent. And, it was good to see it was still in shape. It was sad to see. It's like, yeah, this doesn't get used very much anymore. I mean, there were 3 rooms, and they were always full and booked ahead and rocking. And, the recording industry, just like the record industry, has changed so much. It was kind of sad to see. It's like, yeah, Ardent's probably going to be struggling like all the other studios.
So when that first record came out, you guys were getting, and I've read in the press releases, I've read, countless stories about you guys. I mean, the notice that you guys were getting in the press was unbelievable. I mean, it was so positive and so optimistic about, the Rainmakers being the next great American band. Like you said, it's a quick transition from being lost and forgotten in a pile. You're at Ardent, and now the press is responding to what you've done with a song, Let My People Go Go, being a big hit. That has to be so surreal and so fast. I mean, do you feel like you were even remotely prepared for something like that at the time? Yeah,
we were prepared. I mean, not to compare ourselves to the Beatles, but, the Beatles always say that when it finally broke for them, both in England and then in America, they had been playing together for 6 years or something. They had been hammering it out in the clubs. They knew how to do this. And we were kind of in the same position, even though we were adding a member. We had been playing 4 hours a night, 4 or 5 days a week for about 3 years or 4 years. So we knew how to do this. And we knew how to do that part of the job really well. We were lucky. There's so many cliches about timing is everything, but we were really lucky in our timing in that we got into Mercury Records with an A&R man that absolutely protected us like we were his children. Very, very, very protective of us. Terry Manning, very much into what we were doing. He didn't he nor the A&R people or anybody said, why don't you try doing something different? They were like, do what you're doing, because it's not quite like anything else that anybody else is doing. They were they had a lot of confidence in us. And at that moment, Mercury Polygram was really flush with money, because Bon Jovi had just broken through, Tears for Fears had just broken through, John Mellencamp was making a lot of money. They had all these bands that were hitting their stride as far as million sales stuff. So they had the flexibility to let's spend some real money on these new guys, see what happens. That'll get you so far, and then you have to have your luck and your timing. You just have to hope it falls in place. On the other side of that coin, you talked about "Let My People Go" being a hit. Well, yes and no. We kind of realized that a record company at that point in time in the mid 80s was a army of people. And if you could get all those people on your side or believing in you, they would work their butts off. I just now wrote a message to a guy that I met when he was putting up posters in a record store in Boston. And he went on to be, one of the major promotion people at Mercury. And I just wrote him a message like 10 minutes ago. These were people that genuinely loved music and genuinely would work their butts off for you. All those cliches about record company weasels and they don't give a shit and they just want to, figure out the next way to make the easiest thing, that was not applying to us. We had people that said, do exactly what you're doing. But Let My People Go, that army of people went out and took it to radio stations and said, this is a great song. This is a killer live band. That we want you to play this new record. And so all across the country, we were getting airplay. Back at the record pressing plant, they had some breakdown of production, and the record manufacturing of it got delayed by 2 or 3 weeks. And so radio stations are playing a record that people cannot buy. And as soon as they find out, we're playing a record people can't buy, well, they stop playing that record. So we had this initial boom of everyone was playing it, and then boom, everyone was not, because it did not exist. It's like, well, that's something,
You mentioned about the timing, and this is a perfect example of that. When your timing is right, but then you're relying on everybody else's timing to kind of coalesce with all of that.
Well, and it's like a machine with a million gears, and every once in a while a gear just gets out of whack or breaks or something, and you got to go in and fix it. So they fixed that. Okay, they got the record actually printed and out in stores. Let My People Go had come and gone, gotten a little airplay on MTV. MTV was so crucial at that point in time. You had to get in the door at MTV. Right. So all of our ducks are lined up now. The record is existing. It's in the stores. We're in Newsweek magazine. We're getting we're getting blurbs in Rolling Stone. Okay, everything's lined up. All right, we're going to do our second single, Downstream. We've got a good live video for that, live concert video, and it was a really well done video. Shot it at one of our concerts when the concert was over. Everybody stick around. We're going to make a video, and MTV likes that one even better. They're playing it, and they take the record out to radio Downstream. And it's the same week that Bruce Springsteen releases his boxed set of live, right. Springsteen Live, whatever those years were. And so of the 8 new spots available at radio, well, Bruce gets 6 of them. And then everybody else in the world gets to fight over the other 2. Wow. So we got a little bit squeezed out, and not Bruce's fault. It's just like it's a big machine with a whole lot of gears, and sometimes the gears just don't all mesh up the way you want them to.
What's interesting about all of that is, okay, so American radio stations and consumers don't buy the record in numbers that you would like, but it does somehow become a fairly decent sized hit in Europe. How did that happen? And I mean, it's such an American sounding Midwestern type of band that it almost seems like, why would Europe grab onto this? But they really did.
Well, in Europe, I mean, Western Europe is what we were dealing with. American roots music had always had a real broad following. It never went away. The old rock and roll stars from the 50s, Bill Haley and Jerry Lee Lewis and people like that, they stayed much more respected and concert attendance and all that in Europe for decades after they were playing car shows in the U.S. That roots music just seemed to be revered a little more. So here was this new wave of American bands kind of playing that roots music, stuff that you could see the direct relationship to earlier American rock and roll. And that was doing well in Europe. And so Mercury was part of Polygram. Polygram was actually headquartered in Switzerland, I think. So they, it was an international record company, and so they're like, okay, time, we've got the wheels turning in America. Let's see what to do here in England. And Let My People Go was being played on the BBC, and the BBC had this rule that as long as you were moving up in the charts, they would keep playing it. But once you stopped moving up and it started moving down, then they didn't play you anymore. That was kind of the way it was explained to me.
Right.
Well, our record just kept gaining a point every week, gaining 2 points this week. So they just kept playing. We got played for a long, long time on BBC. So then the BBC play transfers into, there was this show called The Tube, which I think kind of took the place of the old whistle stop test or whatever it was called, where bands performed live, and it was a live broadcast. So you needed to be, you needed to bring it. And we were on with Terrence Trent we were on Top of the Pops. Anyway, we were on with UB40. That's who we were on with, and we played well. And they had lined up Elton John's horn section to play with us. It was like, and we arrived, they've got their shit down, and we played the gig and did it well. And then a month after that, we came back over and did Top of the Pops. And those things make it happen. And so we did well in England, and that of course spread to Germany and France and the Netherlands and then Scandinavia, which was that's where it really worked for us, and we weren't even expecting it. That was all kind of a mystery land up there. We didn't even know where anything was, and we get up there and realize, we're happening up here, and particularly Norway. Norway has been good, very, very good to us.
Yeah, I mean, I've noticed, looking ahead here, you got the live album from Oslo, Wichita Live, which you guys released soon before you broke up, but what was it about Norway that disconnected so much with them?
It's that same thing of the European respect and taste for American roots music and guitar-based music. And, remembering the 80s, synthesizers had kind of kicked the guitar into the back seat for a while, but then the more roots music that was guitar-based, that was finding its own current. And Norway, it's a large country with a very small population. We got a review in a key music magazine, and Norway is one of those countries where a little bit of word of mouth, a little bit of airplay on national radio, and everybody knows about you.
Right.
And that's exactly what happened to us. The record company really worked hard, did their job. National radio played us. We came and did a concert that is... People to this day, talk about our legendary first appearance in Oslo, and that where we proved we're a rock and roll band. We can do this. And then it was just a series of returning to Norway and doing concert tours. They say that the Rainmakers have seen more of Norway than most Norwegians. We traveled top to bottom, winter and summer. We saw every place in that country, and then of course did Sweden and Finland as well, and Denmark. Played the Roskilde Festival in Denmark, and that was a big deal.
And that support continued for the next couple of albums. I mean, they really just continued to support you guys there.
Well, and that was kind of the weird parallel tracks in that our first album did really well in the States. The second one didn't do quite as well. The third one did less than that. It went the other direction in Europe. Our first one did okay. Second one did better. Third one did really well. So it was kind of this contradiction, and it's like, okay, how come this is working over here, but we can't get this to work the same way in the States?
Were you frustrated by that, or were you, what was your mindset at the time?
Not really. I can't really say we were frustrated. I mean, I think we were aware of the chance, the chance, the luck, the timing stuff. We were aware that overruled anyone's best intentions. That people could we could be doing everything right. Our management could be doing most things right. The record company could be working really hard. And still, you need this little dash of luck for it to kind of get over that hill. And, we got over some hills, but we didn't get over all the hills.
And now you're almost at the point where you're over the hill, and you don't want to be there either.
I'm definitely over the hill. So, no, like the third album came out. So we did 2 albums with Terry Manning, and man, cut me off. I get talking about this stuff. I can go for a long time. We did 2 albums with Terry Manning. Both of them we were very happy with. Both of them did, respectably. And then, but the second one didn't do as well as the American record company really expected it to do. They thought it was going to be, first one was going to set the stage, and the second was going to be the home run. Well, that didn't happen. So they said, well, let's change things up. Let's get a different producer. Let's go to a different studio. And I really had mixed feelings about that. I loved Terry. Working with Terry was just great. Right. But they said, well, and I know what tipped them. Georgia Satellites had just had Keep Your Hands to Yourself. And there was like, well, that even sounds like the Rainmakers. And so they wanted to figure out who made that record. Well, it was Jeff Glicksman. And so we went to Austin and recorded with Jeff Glicksman. And it was a live, pretty much live in the studio record. We did some overdubs, but it was the live band, live drums, live vocals on quite a few of the songs. And so we just wanted to make it a much more organic approach, which I enjoyed doing. There's an excitement about not building a recording one instrument at a time. That's long and tedious. It can have a great end result, but there's something just extremely exciting about the whole band plays, me as the lead vocalist, sing your ass off, and when it's done, you realize that's done. We did it, man. Yeah. And maybe it took you 3 tries, maybe it took you 15 tries, but it's really exciting when it all, and well, we don't have to fix anything in that. That's pretty much done.
You mentioned about how as a live band, you guys were really on the ball, and I was listening to the Oslo Wichita album, and it's absolutely true. You guys sound so good. I mean, I realize it's a live album. There's a lot of work that's done in how things are recorded in a live album, but I've heard a lot of live albums that didn't sound even nearly as good as that. But soon after that, you guys decided to take a break. What was going on in the band that decided it was time to step away?
The third record came out, and all those things I was telling you about the first record, where Bon Jovi had made a lot of money, or John Mellencamp had made, all these bands had made Mercury very flush with cash. It was the opposite story. Tears for Fears' next album was delayed by 2 years. John Mellencamp did Big Daddy, which did not sell very well. Def Leppard had a car wreck, and so they were delayed, and the band was, anyway, all these things that had been the cash flow for Mercury all of a sudden had gotten hugely delayed. And so their financial picture changed very fast. And in fact, the week our record was released, they sent out a memo to all the regional promotion people and said, because of budget problems, you have to do everything by phone, and you can't travel. And, the personal showing up at the radio station, showing up at the record store, that army of promotion people did, that's what made the difference. And this is, of course, before cell phones. So telling them you just got to stay in your office or your house and call all these people, it was pretty much just saying, we can't spend any money on things that are risky, like the Rainmakers. We had not broken through to be a big money maker for them. So literally the week our record came out, they stopped doing promotion. And, we went out and toured. We went out with the Doobie Brothers. We went out with, who else were with a long tour with Kansas. And we were out there playing and really doing the work. And I went to a radio station, I think it might have been back here in Kansas City, where the guy says, well, I'm really sorry, man. And I said, sorry about what? And he goes, well, we just got the memo. You were dropped from Mercury Records. I'm like, they didn't even call me.
Wow.
They're telling radio guys we're not promoting this band anymore. They're not on our label. And I'm like, well, wow, that's the first I heard about it, which is really out of character for them. I mean, we had like a personal relationship with Dick Asher, who was the the president of the label, but I think he was leaving right at that time too. So everything was changing, and that's the roll of the dice.
But that's a real shitty way to find out that
that was a shitty way of finding
everything
out.
changes.
So our manager wanted us to. Anyway, that you were asking what brought about us saying we got to stop doing this for a while. The bass player and the guitar player had each missed a birth. That we'd try to plan. Okay, here's the window to stay at home so you can be there when the baby is born. The windows didn't work out. We were in Arkansas for one baby being born, and we were in Denmark for another baby being born, and that starts taking a personal toll. I got divorced during this time.
Sure.
And I have very few bad things to say about the people that managed us. They were really good. One of our managers, he was here at my house this summer. I mean, we still are in touch. We're friends. But they did not build in enough rest time for us. It was just go, go, go. And if we weren't out playing gigs in bars and colleges and stuff, that was when I was at home writing, and we were recording demos, and then we were in the studio. We just didn't take a break for 3 years. And I think it would have served everyone well if they would have said, okay, you guys just need to not do anything for a month. I think that would have served us well. 20/20 hindsight.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when expectations are high, nobody wants to give you that break because they're waiting for something to break.
Keep your nose down to the wheel, and until you feel like you can. We can afford to take a break. So, I think that we just got worn out, and so I pulled the plug. I'm kind of always the guy that pulls the plug. I just said, guys, we are living our dream, and I am miserable, and I got to go figure this out. This has cost me a marriage. I'm not enjoying this. I don't feel like we're doing a very good job now. And we got to figure out, all we can do right now is stop. So we're just going to stop, and we'll figure out what we're going to do after that. But right now we're going to stop. And if you guys want to keep going, have at it. If you want to start another band, have at it. But I'm out of this for a while. It probably would have been smarter on my part to say, we're on hiatus. We're still a band. We're still going to do this. We're going to still reach out there. But, I broke off the contract with our management. The record company, everybody had changed. Nobody that had any loyalty or interest in us was there anymore. Yeah. So all of a sudden it was just kind of like, ooh, the ball game's over. Oh, and we got traded,
right.
We got traded to another league. It was just very confusing. Everyone had worked really hard. We had lots of allies, and then all of a sudden just kind of like, this just didn't work. And why am I unhappy? That was kind of the nail was like, I'm doing exactly what I've dreamed of doing since I was a kid. Why am I miserable?
But I hear that story, and I hear you making the decision to stop for the right reasons. And it's not like there was infighting within the band and you guys are tearing each other apart. Because every 3 or 4 years, it seems like you guys kept, getting back and trying it again and stopping when things weren't right and doing it all over again. So it's like there doesn't seem to be any hostility or, acrimony between the guys in the band. It's always been just about life and circumstances.
Yeah, and about the business. It's like the business is hard. It's a hard way to make a living. And the people that break through and become millionaires or have self-sustaining careers, that is a very, very small fraction of the people that start out playing music or the people that even start out making records. The people that actually that converts into something. We did this long tour with Berlin, and they were nice people. I really liked all of them. And at that time, they were considering just these three people are the band. It was Terry and John and then their drummer. That was who the band was. And they were unhappy. They had this massive hit, Take My Breath Away, and they were unhappy. They were every show. They weren't happy either. And our very first tour was with Big Country, who I adored. I thought, wow, our very first coast to coast tour, we're opening for Big Country, a band that I love. We get to the first gig in San Diego, and those guys are miserable. The record's not happening. They're pissed off at the record company. It's like, oh, I thought everybody here would be happy, but it's like, no, the happiness lies elsewhere. This is a hard business to be in. You can have your moments of everything's going right, and it will be followed by moments where it's not going right. And yeah, I've met too many frustrated people in the music business, and that even applies to the like promotion people. That it's a hard business to be in. It doesn't cut you a break.
So let me ask you this, because I did listen to some of the stuff that that you and your daughter have done, and the stuff that she's done solo, and she's very, very talented. That stuff is really, really good. But as someone who has been in music for as long as you have, I mean, you must have a certain perspective about it that I'm sure your folks didn't have when you were starting out. What do you tell your kid when they've got talent and the drive to do something with their music? I mean, are you encouraging, or are you kind of like, it's a little bit of trepidation in how you talk about this?
Well, there was definitely trepidation, as she said, I really want to go for this. And I tried to point out to her, okay, here's what I have learned. And, it's that same conversation that any good parent and child relationship, where you try to tell your kid what you've learned, and the truth is they have to learn it themselves. It doesn't matter if they're trying to go into the same line of business. It doesn't matter if it's about love and romance or about how to plant a garden. They have to go figure it out themselves. And, I tried to tell her, here's the parts that I loved, and here's the parts that were so much harder than I would have guessed. I was at we were doing a show here in Kansas City, and Steve Forbert was playing in the little adjoining bar, and I had loved Steve Forbert since his first record, and so I was really anxious to meet him. And the guy who's introduced us said, "Yeah, Bob does music with his daughter now and then." And Steve looks at me and he goes, "Man, you don't want her to go to the music business, do you?" And I said, "Well, kind of worked out for you and me. It is a way to make a living." So, I again, here's part of the good timing. I was the songwriter of the band at a time when publishing companies were throwing money around like it was candy. I got some very good publishing advances. So, I actually made a living doing this, and I've done something else for a living for about a decade. I was in video production for a while, but making music has provided me a living and provided me a pretty good one. So, I tried to convey that to my daughter, that you can be, and she's a smart, practical person. I said, you have to be smart and practical about this, and you have to love music. I said, if you're just in it for the lifestyle, it's not going to last. Everybody that I knew who just wanted to look and act like a rock star, those guys didn't last very long at all. You got to dearly love music to endure in it. And she's taking a break from it right now. It didn't really seem to fit her lifestyle, the kind of life she wanted. She realized, you're just out, riding vans and trains and buses and bad airplanes and staying in motels, and that you get way too late and you have to leave way too early, and this is hard. She realized this is hard. So
I think every kid has to discover on their own that dad is not so stupid after all. Maybe dad knew what he was talking about.
Tell them that. They have to, they have to kind of experience the sensory part of it themselves. It's like, this is just as hard as dad said it would be.
Yeah. I want to mention a little bit about your art career. I know you started off as an art student. It sounds like music actually got in the way of you becoming a full-time artist at the time. Tell me about your work as a painter. I mean, I've seen some of it online. It's really very, very good.
Well, thank you. There's so many people involved in music who have always done visual art too. I mean, there's a great book of Paul McCartney's paintings. Tony Bennett was a great painter, really good painter. Ron Wood's a very accomplished painter. Joni Mitchell. There's so many of them, of people that dabble both sides. And I was that way as a kid too. I was already singing. I came from a very small town, and I was always singing in church and school plays and all that stuff. So I was getting the positive reinforcement from music, but I always loved making visual art. And that's kind of two very different sides of your personality. I mean, making music, even though you're writing and creating music very privately, it's with the idea you're going to take it out to the world, and you're going to play it live, and you're going to make people dance. You're going to rock them. That's where that goes.
Yeah.
The visual arts is silence. It's about silence. It's about, you're going to make this on your own. You're going to hang it up somewhere. You're not going to be there when people see it. If somebody wants to buy it, that's great. You'll say goodbye to it, and you'll never see it again. It's two very different kinds of it, but it's just making stuff. I kind of realized that what the arts is all about is just a bunch of people that want to make stuff. You feel good when you're making stuff. And if you're not making stuff, you just get kind of edgy and antsy, and you just need to be making stuff.
Yeah. I read a quote by you, and I thought it was actually interesting. You talked about silence. And, songs are about words and sound, but painting is about silence and about finding a language that doesn't use words. I thought that was a really interesting way of putting it. But you're good at expressing yourself in both ways. Of the two, which one is more satisfying to you?
Oh, music has been more satisfying. I would just have to say it fall on the side of music. Being successful in the visual arts industry is even kind of harder and yuckier in many ways than the music business. You eventually have to only be selling your visual art to rich people if you want to make a living at it. You have to be selling it. If you want to make a really good living at it, you have to be selling it to rich people and to corporations. Records, CDs, cassettes, whatever, you're selling beers,
Right.
here's a cassette for $7 or whatever, here's an album for $10. You're reaching the masses. So it's the way to make a living doing each one of those kind of goes a very different path. And, rock and roll is a people's music. It's a beer sales. With the visual art, you're eventually selling cocaine, I think.
Now we go back to the A&R guys.
Yeah, there you go.
So I know that that things have changed, with the band. Steve Phillips is no longer with us. But where are you at with music today? I mean, are the Rainmakers, still a thing, or have you moved on to something new?
The Rainmakers are not a thing anymore. I, again, made a decision last August that it was time to bring this to a close. We didn't play it all during the pandemic until just at the end of the pandemic. We did an outside gig, and so we weren't playing real often. Going to Norway, which we started up again in 2011, and we would go over once or twice a year from 2011 till the pandemic started. That was a wonderful, fun. We saw so much in Norway, even more of Norway than we had before. We have good friends over there. We would go over as a band. I would go over solo and take my wife. Went over with my daughter and my wife went too. And Norway was home away from home. But those trips just got harder and harder physically to do. The band would go for 2 weeks and play 10 shows in 12 days, and then a day to get there and a day to get home. It was exhausting. And by the last time I did it, it was just an endurance contest. I'm like, I just don't want to do this anymore. Yeah. This is too hard. People say, well, you're huge in Norway. Well, we're remembered in Norway. We were never
we are notable.
We were never Bruce Springsteen in Norway. We were we were doing nice music clubs, some very cool festivals. Yeah. Did a short group of dates with Leonard Cohen. Just wonderful, cool experiences. But I reached the point where I was like, this is just, I'm not enjoying this. It's too hard. And so in 2019, we did a farewell show at a friend's farm in north central Norway. Boats behind us. The stage is right down on the water.
Wow.
It was just picturesque beyond description. It was just wonderful. And, dozens of friends are there. And so we brought that to an end. And I said, and this will be it, guys. And we immediately start getting offers for festivals again in Norway. And I'm like, no, we billed this as a farewell show. And we were not Kiss. We really meant it. This is farewell. So, I don't want to get on an international flight again, ever. Yeah. But it makes life easier when you make these decisions firmly instead of saying, well, if the money's good enough, maybe. It's like, no, just either say yes or no. Well, it makes me feel better to just say, no, we've done that. We've done it well. We had a perfect ending. I don't want to do it again. Kind of came that same thing in the States, in that when we started playing again in 2011, we tried to get a gig in Chicago. We couldn't get one. We played in St. Louis. We played, Minneapolis several times, but not to Denver. We played, kind of a big circle around the Midwest. I didn't really want to go to the coasts. It's just, it's a lot of work to get to the coast, and you can't really make any money at our little level.
Yeah.
So, once the pandemic was over and we got to playing again, we were only playing about 4 or 5 dates a year, which is not enough dates to stay sharp. And so this past year, all during 2022, I just said, okay, we're playing okay. I think we should stop while we're playing okay.
Yeah.
We're getting older. There's nothing you can do about that. We don't play often enough. We don't really have the opportunities to play often enough to stay really sharp and really blow people away. We're doing okay, but let's stop while we're doing okay.
Yeah.
So I said, I'm just not going to book anything in 2023, and we're not going to announce it as a farewell or goodbye or anything, just in case I change my mind or we change our minds. I said, but I don't think so. So yeah, we just went and played some gigs during the holidays and had a little New Year's Eve party for our very close, loyal fan base here, and that was it. And I was really okay with that being, that's the way this story ends. Our story has been, kind of different than everybody else's story. So I kind of like, well, let's make the ending a little different. We're not going to do a farewell. We're just going to play a gig and then we just won't play another one. That feels right for this story.
Well, it's like we were saying before. I mean, the decisions you made along the way have all been, you did it all for the right reasons. And I think, you even go out with the right reasons. And, while you're all still capable of making those right decisions, I have to respect that.
Well, and I think you have to be really true to your own analysis of where you are in life and what you want life to be. For the life of me, I haven't been I went to see Paul McCartney in 2015. My wife and I did. I'm glad I went. I'd never seen a Beatle. I didn't enjoy the show,
Right.
There's 16,000 assholes singing along in every song. I don't want to hear you sing. I want to hear Paul sing. Well, you don't get to do that. I don't like big shows. And for the life of me, I watch Paul, videos of Paul or Bruce Springsteen or Dylan, and I'm like, I really can't figure out why they're still doing it. I don't understand it. I'm glad they've got their reasons, and I'm glad it works for them. I don't get it. It's like, you can't make any more money. Your legacy is established. You must love doing it. That's all I can hope is that they absolutely love doing it. I love doing it, but I don't love traveling.
Yeah.
I don't like playing loud anymore. I wear hearing aids now. I've beat up my hearing so much. So so at the end of last year, I just asked myself, what parts of this do you love and which parts of this do you not love? And said, that's what I'm going to narrow it down to. And I still love writing a new song. I love recording it here in my little home studio. A few hundred people hear it. It doesn't get out to a mass audience. Wish it was a bigger audience, but I can't change that.
Yeah.
But I can still make a song. I like playing solo, and so I go down to my neighborhood bar twice a month and I play solo. I was doing a lot of house concerts before the pandemic. I was traveling coast to coast and flying a lot and driving a lot. And I thought, I like doing the house concerts. I really don't like driving, and I really don't like flying, and I really don't want to stay in motels anymore.
Right.
So if it's within an hour and I can drive home and sleep in my own bed, I'll come and play a house concert for you. But those are the terms, and again, it's putting those terms down for yourself and saying, here's my parameters, and this is just a conversation between you and yourself. Here's my parameters of what I can say I truly love doing, and now stick inside these parameters. So, this, and the end of the Rainmakers there's been a grieving thing to it to me. It's hit me a little harder than I was expecting, and a lot more thinking that I needed to do about it, a lot more kind of analyzing, what does this all mean? Where did this all add up to? But all in all, it's kind of like, this is, I wrote a song called My Version of the Story, and that's kind of, this is my version of the story, and it's a little different. It's quite a bit different than a lot of people's version of the story, but, I got to see the story to the end, so I'm okay with that.
Bob, this has been so great. I've really enjoyed talking to you today. It's like I said, that song has been in my head for 37 years, and it's like, damn you, Bob, but it's in there, and it's just so wonderful to kind of get the full story about it. So I do appreciate the time today. Thank you so much.
Well, I thank you so much too, and I hope Alan warned you that I'm a jabberbox. So I hope you can make some sense out of that.
I absolutely can. Thank you, Bob. Appreciate the time. Take care.
Thank you, Mike.
Bye-bye.
Nice talking to you. Bye-bye.
There you go, Bob Walkenhorst from the Rainmakers. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, feel free to like it, share it, review it, tell all your friends about it. You can email me at bax@rock102.com. I'd love to know what you think. I'm also all over social media too, and I'd love to hear from you there as well. Thanks again to Z&M Home Buyers for their support. You can support them by going to znmhomes.com. And thank you again for listening to Baxy's Musical Podcast.